Welcome to another short subject from EducateVirtually.com. The DMAIC Process Improvement Success Criteria. This is video number 4 of our 5-part series. So we've already covered define, measure, and analyze, and now we're going to talk about the improve phase of DMAIC. So let's get started. This is phase 4, the improve phase. Here's our objectives. We want to develop creative solutions to those verified root causes. All right? We want to evaluate and select the best solutions that have the lowest risk and the highest rewards. Pilot test this stuff. Make sure it works. Is it achieving our stated goals? That's very important. We've always come up with, and all of us have, we've come up with solutions that if we implemented them, they either worked or they didn't. And so if we test them before we go diving off that bridge to make sure they really truly do work, all right, that's what pilot testing is all about. The other thing that's good about pilot testing is that we can understand some of the roadblocks or some of the things we're going to have to deal with when we try to fully implement the solution, and we may have to take some corrective actions while we're pilot testing to do a better job when it comes time for full-scale implementation. So the pilot testing is very important. And then the last thing we need to do is to make sure that we've developed a full-scale implementation plan so that we can implement these tested solutions. So some of the tools, all right, brainstorming creativity techniques. There's a whole bunch of them, all right, and some of these can come from Michael Belchalco, Thinker Toys, Think Like a Kid, Get Rid of Excuses, Break the Rules, Scamper, Slice and Dice, Idea Box, Brute Think. Now these are all creativity techniques. On our YouTube channel we have videos that show you how to do these. Data collection and sampling plans, like I mentioned before, we're going to be using those pretty much throughout the whole process of DMAIC. All right. Detailed future state process maps. All right, so here we're saying, okay, here's our future state. This is what it's going to be. Now, one of the things we need to think about is how do we go from the current state to bridge the gap to get to that future state? What are the improvements we're going to make that happen, to facilitate changing from the current state to the future state? All right, so just looking at that gap analysis is a really good way to identify improvements that are going to be required to be implemented so that we can get to that future state, the all-important improved process. We can use things like failure mode effects analysis and quality function deployment as some matrix methods to help us to understand things we need to do and to assure that we're meeting customer requirements. All right, we can use some hypothesis testing and design of experiments to validate our pilot testing and make sure that it actually works. Implementation project planning, analysis of stakeholder commitment and support. This is really important from the standpoint of we're going to be implementing change. Nobody wants to change. Change is difficult, right? But if we can communicate and we can keep our stakeholders informed, and we do that throughout our DMAIC improvement process, then we're going to have an easier time of implementing the changes that make sense to make the improvements. So to do that, we need to understand our stakeholders, and we need to understand their commitment to the support of our project in improving the process. The deliverables. To be successful, this is what we have to get done. A prioritized list of the best solutions to implement. Okay, we came up with some solutions, we prioritized them, we looked at risk, reward, we pilot tested, and now we know what it is we're going to implement. All right, the results from the pilot testing to verify that these solutions actually work. A full-scale implementation plan. And then one of the key things here, and this is not something to be taken lightly, an assessment of the interdependencies with current management policies, management systems, procedures. I mean, are you going to run up against something with your information system that you're going to require changes to be made there? If you've identified some things that are going to require IT support, you better get that in the queue as soon as possible, because often The ID department is bogged down with a whole laundry list of things that they've got to implement and install so that the information system can support the business. So if we're going to make improvements, we need to make sure that we can do it manually before we automate it, because we may have to wait for a while for that automation to get implemented. So understand, are we going to bump heads with any management systems, policies, or procedures? And we're going to have to pave the way for that. How do we do that? Stakeholder commitment and communication. So that's the success criteria for the improve phase of DMAIC. And now we're ready to move into the control phase, where we're going to fully implement the solutions and put controls in place to maintain the gains.